basketball world and Celtics fans are losing their minds over all these clips we're seeing of Jayson Tatum, presumably really rocking his rehab and looking like he's going to be ready to return to the court sooner than expected. But what's really going on here? Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Brian Sutterer, and the goal in this channel is to teach you more about the medical side of the sports world. So we just saw an updated video today that went around social media of Jayson Tatum dunking. Now, I kind of made a little comment on Twitter, or X, sorry, that if we're going to count this as a dunk, then that's a little bit ridiculous. He's basically just doing a standing double leg jump. I know it is technically a dunk, but everybody like sharing this as, man, look at him exploding off of that leg, etc. Don't get me wrong. This is impressive. This is great to see, but this is really not that far ahead, if ahead at all, of what you would actually expect his rehab progression to be. This video was shared at the end of September, where we saw Tatum working out in the gym, dribbling, cutting, jogging up and down the court. To me, this was more impressive than what we saw today with just the dunk, but still, I want to put this in the context of what you would expect with the rehab timeline for somebody that's at where Tatum is, to know, like, is this really like a miraculous changing the standard recovery, or is this just kind of in line and we're just seeing more of it because of social media? Now, Jayson Tatum's surgeon was a doctor named Martin O'Malley. And if you look at this research paper, this was published and it looks like, 2024, so pretty recent, International Journal of Sports Physical Therapy. The primary author is the first person listed. That's usually who's responsible for the bulk of the work. Most of these authors are physical therapists. At the very end, though, we see who other than Dr. Martin O'Malley, the surgeon who operated on Jayson Tatum. And what this paper does is it goes through rehab and return to sport after Achilles tendon repair. So presumably, the last author on a paper is sort of like the mentor, the guy who's kind of giving the insight and a lot of the background knowledge for something like this, at least from a medical perspective, not the PT perspective. And so presumably a lot of this is stuff that Dr. O'Malley would agree with. And he runs through in this article all of the rehab progression, the different stages. And the big point of this is this table that we see here within that article. Now let's pull it up and take a closer look, because this should be roughly what Tatum is following. So let's see what this is and if he's really on pace, if he's ahead of pace, etc. So remember too, let me back up and fill in the gaps here with something. Tatum had his surgery very quickly. I think that's great, because when you're talking about return to sport, weeks matter, especially if the injury occurs at a time when you could get back that following season. And so it's good, I think, that Tatum had surgery so quickly. I'll admit that might be to be determined, because a lot of times surgery happens a week, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks later. And so I think the assumption is that it's good that it happened right away, but I think it's too early to say, because that's definitely not the standard of care. He just happened to be in New York at the time, and so it worked out really well. There's also been some talk on, I think, like Bill Simmons' podcast, where he's mentioned there's two types of surgery. Tatum had like the good one. He keeps describing it as like Tatum had the full-blown thing, the good one. That's not really the right way of presenting this. So the traditional way of fixing an Achilles tendon rupture was a primary repair, meaning you take the two torn ends of the tendon and you sew the tendons back together. That is a primary repair. This newer technique that's been used is this suture tape technique, this speed bridge technique, where they actually put bone anchors down in the calcaneus, in the heel bone, and then anchor the sutures from there to help support the tendon. So you're not relying on just the primary repair tendon to tendon, you're also relying on that confluence with the bone. And that's not something revolutionary in the last like month or two. That's been done for a number of years here and does seem to be a pretty recent standard for athletes. Because you're getting this backup support on the tendon through the bone, you are allowed to rehab quicker, and it does tend to facilitate quicker return to sport. Similar to when we do like suture tape, primary repairs, brace augmentation of the UCL in the elbow, you're again getting some extra support on the healing structure and therefore quicker return to play. So I just want to clear that up if any of you had heard that. It's not like Tatum had a better surgery. It's just a different surgery that still repairs the tendon, just with that external support anchoring into the calcaneus. So let's go back to this rehab protocol. Tatum at this point, when we saw him dunking, is, I believe, right around 150 days or 5 months out from his surgery. The surgery was on May 13th. And so if we extrapolate that, June, July, August, September, October, he's basically 5 months out from his injury. If we go to our rehab protocol that's in Dr. O'Malley's paper, the late stage of rehab is 12 to 24 weeks. So this is going to be 4 to 6 months. In that phase, you are going to be doing DL, that means double leg jump progression, and moving on to pogo jumping with band resistance, so jumping on one leg. You're improving single leg plantar flexion strength. That's the strength of the foot going down. You're doing a plyometric progression and completing a return to run program to advance out of that stage. So these are milestones for progression, right? Initially, post-op, wound healing, cast gets removed, weight bearing in the boot, ankle range of motion, double calf raises through full range of motion. And you're progressing through all these different stages. 24 weeks on, so 6+ weeks, is return to sport. This is where you're getting through your plyometric progression. You're working on global strength. You're initiating an on-court progression. And there's some different criteria in here. Let me zoom in a little bit more so you guys can see this better about exact kind of strength metrics to have before that full return to sport. But you can see in here, like, this is a range. Late rehab, 12 to 24 weeks. This means it can be anywhere from that 4 to 6 month mark where you hit these goals of those progressions into your return to sport phase. So there are rough guidelines for when we should be hitting certain milestones with return to play in these rehab programs, but it's not like it has to be exactly at 6 weeks before you're allowed to do anything. People heal on very different spectrums, and I do think, yes, it seems like Tatum is a little bit on the quicker side of healing, but it's not like it's revolutionary, shocking, groundbreaking types of progression. He's on the early side of this, but again, theoretically at 4 months, he could be dunking, and we see him dunking at 5 months. He's been jogging on the court at right around 4.5 months. And so again, well within that time frame of doing his return to run progression. I have thought all along that it is very reasonable and appropriate for Tatum to return this season. If you extrapolate this out, most basketball players are going to have a return to sport time somewhere around maybe 8, 9, 10 months or so. And so again, surgery in May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January. So January is 8 months. He could theoretically come back after the All-Star break, and in no way would it be a shocking return time or a shocking recovery. What you have to keep in mind is the time at which the athlete gets injured and has surgery relative to the season has just as much play on if they return the following season or not. So perfect example, if Tatum had had his injury in the summer, if you extrapolate that time out, he's obviously going to miss the following season because you're getting back when you have maybe a month or two left in the season, versus if your injury happens at a time where 8 to 12 months you're earlier up at the following season. All of these things matter. What the team has to decide is if they feel like it's worth bringing him back for that period. They're not going to ramp up and accelerate his rehab in December or January. They're going to have to ramp up and accelerate his rehab in like November, December, earlier than that, if they think they want to get him back on the court. And that is just as much a team planning sort of strategy as it is how is he doing on the court. Certainly his healing is going to determine things, but they also might say, you know what, we're not even going to mess with it. We're not going to push him at all. But everything we're seeing, and again, the appropriate timeline, return to sport, 6 months plus. If he's able to hit those benchmarks, there's no reason whatsoever that he should be held out. I think it would be totally appropriate for him to be back around the time of the All-Star break. That would not be miraculous. That would not be heroic. Remember, we're dealing with weeks and individual months here. And so the fact that he had his injury when he did, he got surgery as quickly as he did, that could have saved him a month. And when you're talking about a month in the span of the NBA season, that could be the difference in him coming back at a time where they feel it's worth it and him not coming back at all. So if I made people upset because of my comment about the dunking, again, it's not like he's exploding off of one leg to dunk. He's doing a double leg jump, which is very in line with his rehab protocol that has been based on literature from his surgeon. I think he will be back this year. I think we see him back, not this calendar year, but I think we see him back this season. He wants to be back. There's no reason to delay his rehab. He's been progressing as expected, if not a little bit quicker. So I would expect that we see Tatum back sometime around January, February, maybe post All-Star break as a good goal. That's it for the video, everybody. Let me know as always any questions or comments down below. And until next time, we'll see you later.